What is up, everybody? Welcome on in to Jets Media. We got a special guest in today's live show, and I'm really excited to have him on because he is a Jets insider, covers the New York Jets for The Athletic, and I'm really excited to get his thoughts about what happened with the New York Jets and the New York Giants joint practice. The Jets' Week 1 victory over the Green Bay Packers. There's a lot to unpack, so without further ado, let's welcome him on in, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt himself. Zach, welcome to the show, my man. How you doing?
I'm good, Richie. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Really excited to have you on. Senior writer of The Athletic. Also has a Jets podcast, Flight Plan, so go check that out. All the links are in the description. Zach, let's get straight into it, man. You were there yesterday and today. Jets-Giants joint practice. And I first just want to ask you, what do the Jets get out of something like this, going up against somebody differently than themselves, right? This is a completely different energy. They can beat up against somebody else at practice. So what were your biggest takeaways from that standpoint?
I mean, that is the largest takeaway because, the Jets, the O-line and the D-line, Membo's blocking Will McDonald all of camp. Will McDonald's a very specific kind of defensive end. Like, there's not a lot of others like him. So you go to the Giants practices, he's having to block Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. They move those guys all over the place, which is also a good look for them. Not to get too ahead of myself, but, that's why the Giants defensive line winning a lot of their matchups, I actually took it kind of as a positive because I'm still high on this offensive line, but they're getting a good look against these really talented defensive line that really changes the looks up. Dexter Lawrence. And so that's the biggest value to me. You're seeing different faces. They're not fully tackling each other. So it's not actual game style stuff, but you're getting different looks. You're seeing how someone like Justin Fields or, someone who's standing out in a Jets practice, like a Brandon Stevens, how he looks against a different opponent who he's not seeing every day.
Yeah, exactly. This offensive line, a lot of people are saying it's a big strength for this New York Jets football team, and they're going up against a New York Giants defensive line, which could be the best in the league if Abdul Carter lives up to the hype, which I think he will, by the way. But it was really awesome to see this Jets football team go up against the New York Giants. Now, I want to get your thoughts of Aaron Glenn because you have, the privilege to talk to him in the press conferences. And, from a fan perspective, I can feel the shift. And, just because there's a shift doesn't guarantee it's going to be a positive shift. But, man, it feels like there's something different with Aaron Glenn. So from your perspective, what has been the biggest differences that you've noticed from him since he's been the Jets head coach?
I mean, I would say your initial point is very measured and accurate. Everything is great right now and everything feels different, but obviously things change fast when the season starts and if you're not winning or blah, blah, blah. And so the buy-in really comes when the games start ultimately. But I think he's made of all the right things. I think he's the exact coach they needed for where they're at as an organization. This was the perfect time for him and the organization. This is a long time coming for him. He's wanted to be a head coach for so long, kept getting passed over. The Jets actually passing him over, I believe, was for Saleh when he was with the Saints. Was a very motivator, or maybe it was Gase. I keep forgetting which one it was he was passed up for, but he interviewed with the Jets when he was with the Saints and didn't get it. And that was a motivator for him where he started taking notes and how he's going to do this job when he started. And so, I think the way they run practice, the way he talks to his team, the way he talks about his team, the accountability, not letting guys get away with things, the way they want to run their team, they're building it around the guys they have as opposed to trying to fit players into a scheme, which I think maybe the last half did a little bit, especially initially with LaFleur. I think he was very set on running that offense, even if it wasn't maybe a good fit for a Zach Wilson or whatever. But, so I think everything they're doing makes sense, which, seems like a very obvious thing for any team, but the Jets have not really done a lot of things that make sense over the years. So I've been very impressed with him. When they hired him, I wouldn't say I was skeptical, but it's just an unknown, a guy who's never been a head coach. You hear a lot of hype about how good of a leader he is, all this stuff. You heard all that about Saleh. You heard it about past coaches. And when they get in the job, when they're in New York, it doesn't work. So I've been very impressed with him, the way he handles the media, the way he handles the day-to-day, all this stuff. It hasn't been perfect by any means, but I think he has a plan. He has a design of what he wants his players to be like and what he wants the culture to be like. And so far, I've been very, very impressed. And if you want to believe in the Jets, I think it starts with the coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree. And I really do think that you have to be able to handle the media if you are the New York Jets head coach. And I am very open about that because every time I watch a press conference of Aaron Glenn, I'm just impressed. I come away like, yes, like this is a guy that knows how to hold his ground. And, you are a member of the media. So I feel like what Aaron Glenn provides, he's very transparent. And I love how every time he goes on the podium, he talks for like a minute and a half before there's any questions. Just give you guys a rundown. And I feel like you have to be able to handle the spotlight of New York. And I think that is something that's important. And I also agree with everything you said about the Aaron Glenn effect in terms of when the season comes around, we're going to really know about Aaron Glenn. But I want to shift it to my perspective of what I saw at Jets camp even yesterday and today. He's with the offense. Like at joint practice, you have the Jets offense on one field, the Jets defense on the other field. He was with the offense for both days, and that really shows something because he's a defensive-minded head coach because he was a defensive coordinator, of course. But us Jets fans are used to these defensive-minded head coaches like going over and just focusing on the defense. He trusts in Steve Wilks, and he is super hands-on with this offense. And he says, I'm a head coach. I'm not here to coach one side of the ball, all three phases of the ball. So how hands-on is Aaron Glenn with the offense? Have you noticed anything like that from your perspective?
I think he's hands on with everything. But I think he also is smart enough to understand that the offense maybe needs a heavier hand right now. Like I think one of Salah's, and I get it to a degree. Like Salah wanted to kind of be a CEO, and he was a defensive guy, and it took him until I want to say even like last offseason when he really was getting more involved with the offense. And then some coaches are like that; they like to be on the side of the ball they're experts at. But Aaron Glenn, like if you want to piss Aaron Glenn off, ask him about the transition from being a defensive coach to the head coach, because they'll be like, I'm not a defensive coach. I'm a football coach. And, I've talked to people in the Lions organization from the beginning. Dan Campbell was like bouncing ideas off him about the whole operation. I heard stories about how like the front office would like go to Aaron Glenn for his evaluations on offensive players because they trusted his evaluation so deeply. So he's someone that has he has an idea of what he wants his offense to look like. Tanner Engstrand has never called plays in the NFL. He did in college. So, but they're building this offense in Aaron Glenn's image ultimately. So I think, the fact that most of the camp, we've seen him bouncing around everywhere. But yeah, the last 2 days, he was only watching the offense, which was interesting. And I mean, and based on the play and practice and things like that, like they need the most help. Like they have been inconsistent, not bad by any stretch. Like I'm not as alarmist as maybe some people tend to be with this stuff. Because I don't think they've been bad. I don't think they've been great. They've been kind of right down the middle. Justin Fields is someone who needs a lot more attention, and you have a lot of receivers that are really developing. So I think it makes a lot of sense ultimately that he's
and that leads me into my next question, which is all about the offense. All eyes are not just on Aaron Glenn, it's on Justin Fields. I mean, this Jets organization has been looking for a quarterback. I mean, my whole life, I'm 27 years old. I mean, I'm still waiting for the guy. We drafted Sam Darnold. I thought he was the guy. Prematurely, my brain thought he was the guy. Nope. Then I was like, okay, Zach Wilson, I don't think you're the guy until you prove it. He never proved it. Aaron Rodgers, and now here we are. Justin Fields. So, Zach, based off everything you've seen, it's so early on. I mean, I know that he led that touchdown drive against the Packers, and now all Jets fans think we're going 17-0 and everything with those checkdowns and the rushing touchdown. But all jokes aside, what is your impressions of Justin Fields? Because I feel like there is something there. Like, you see the talent. He's physically talented. I think he has a really good arm, and he has the mobility. But the question is, can he process things mentally? So what is your overall thoughts of Justin Fields, how he holds himself in the podium at the interviews, and, of course, how he looks on the football field?
Yeah, he's a fascinating quarterback. Like if you look at all the quarterbacks you just mentioned, they all like brought something a little bit different, and he's like so much different than all of those guys. Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers, the way he approaches it, his personality. And so like I think my evaluation of him is kind of layered because on one hand, like they've never had a quarterback who has his mobility and he uses his legs, I think, in a smart way. Like he had a great read option play today. That was like a legit one. Sometimes it's hard to tell because the guys are like pulling up and they can't hit him, but like he had a lot of room to run. And that threat of having him, having Breland, having Brees, like having all those guys and him, and I can pull back and I can throw it to Garrett on a slant. Like I think that's going to be a very effective weapon. I think that, Zach Wilson is somebody who often missed those check down. I mean, this is a very basic thing for quarterback, but he would often miss those short passes, the check downs, the ones that were right there because he'd get in his head. I don't think Justin Fields really gets in his head and like the easy plays. I think he can handle. I can dump it off if something's there. I think he's gotten better at least from when he was younger at dumping it off, hitting Garrett on a slant, throwing it quickly if the pass rush is there, throwing it away. Like he has those baseline abilities, which if you're just asking him to manage the game, like I think he has the ability to do that. I do have questions about, they've really either they've restricted him from doing it or he hasn't been doing it, which is he hasn't taken shots downfield really in a while. It's been very like intermediate, short dump offs, and that's kind of the big question for him. If the Jets are going to be trailing in some games this year, you're going to need to throw the ball down the field. Does he have the ability to make the right decisions in those moments? Like that's the biggest question I have for him. And it hasn't been like an explosive offense in camp, but the running game is really, really good. That starts with him. I think that he's probably kind of looked at like what you'd expect Justin Fields to look like. So, the last 2 days, based on my like tracking, which obviously I know doesn't matter ultimately, but in the 11 on 11s, he was around like 61%, which is what he was at for his career. So it's kind of in line with who he is, but there's a ceiling to get better. I think the Jets are like easing him into more and more as camp goes on, expanding his packages and things like that. Another factor is the receivers. It's not a great group outside of Garrett. Some guys have flashed, but who's really scaring a defensive coordinator outside of Garrett Wilson? So a lot of factors here, but I wouldn't say I'm like down on him. I'm not up on him. I'm just kind of like, okay, this is kind of what I expected. But if they're going to be like good, you need a little bit more, I would say.
Yeah, and the one thing I noticed about Justin Fields, he said this in the press conference this week that I took note of, is that, and Aaron Glenn said it as well multiple times, that he's really phasing out the noise externally.
Yeah.
And he admitted that that did get to me. And he's like, in the last 6 months, this is a new version. And I think that could absolutely affect his ability to process to field. Like when you're worrying about other people's opinions and you're worried about what everybody has to say about you, it's going to translate to some negative plays on the football field. And, it's one thing to say it, but you actually have to act it, of not allowing the attention of all these people trying to criticize you get to you. So that's one thing I did notice with Justin Fields. And, this is a guy that is absolutely trying to make himself, and the Jets are giving him the keys. They're like, this is your chance, and it's up to Justin Fields to take it and run with it. So I want to give you some quick questions outside of Justin Fields, Zach. Who are the stars of camp in your eyes that no one's really talking about, right? Because there's so many players that Jets fans are just super excited about. They're trying to make the team. There's competition all over the place. But who is a guy that you think is really making a case for himself to make the 53-man roster that you think has been absolutely someone to watch every time you're at practice? Anybody come to mind?
The phrasing is funny because I know you've covered the team pretty closely, so I'm sure like if I say Brandon Smith, like I feel like Jets fans kind of know who that is at this point. But he's
that's a good one.
Yeah, he's someone that jumps to mind. Today he was getting reps with Justin Fields. That's the first time that's happened. I think Lazard being out probably helps him. He's been producing since the spring. He produced last summer. And if he can find a role on like special teams, like that's his path to the roster. And yeah, he's someone who's really, really impressed me as like an under the radar guy. Somebody who kind of jumped out as like a low key guy from Saturday, less so from like paying attention to practice, because special teams we don't really like. It's hard to evaluate special teams in practice, like just how guys are looking. But Jamarcus Weston, the undrafted kid from Florida, he's not really somebody you're going to play on defense probably, but special teams, they signed him to a pretty big guarantee for UDFA. He made a play in the game. He's someone who I think could be a sneaky guy that could make the team as like a special teams gunner, like a Justin Hardy, Irv Charles, like menace type. I think they're really high on his potential at that. He's in terms of like just under the radar guys, like he's who jumps to my mind.
And the most intriguing position, I think, in every single Jets fan mind is the wide receivers, right? Because who is going to make it? Malachi Corley is a guy that the last regime was obsessed with. He'll do whatever it takes to draft him. And I liked him pre-draft as well. But, I don't see any buzz around Malachi Corley's name. We're seeing a lot of guys above him on the depth chart. So who is going to make the team at the wide receiver position? Do you think there's a world where this coaching staff and this front office decides that Malachi Corley can get cut? Because I think that there's a lot of people ahead of him in the depth chart right now. What's your thoughts about that situation?
Yeah, I think with Corley at this point, he has to fight his way onto the roster. Like that's just based on the way the reps they've given him. He's gotten most of his reps with like the second and third team. Like Brady Cook and Adrian Martinez have been his quarterbacks most of the summer. Whereas, like I said, Brandon Smith getting reps with Justin Fields, Arian Smith really making an impact. And, he's gotten a lot of reps with Tyrod and a couple with Fields. And like a lot of it you base around the reps. Like I think they wanted Corley to come out and prove to them that he deserved his billing as like a guy. And, I think he fell behind by missing most of the spring with injuries. Like the coaches kind of alluded to that. And so he's someone who has a lot to prove, and he didn't really do anything in that preseason game. The preseason games in theory, should be where he stands out because he's like a after the catch guy, break tackles, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he's someone that, you look at that receiver room, it fills up pretty quick depending on the severity of Lazard's injury. So you have Garrett Wilson, you have Josh Reynolds, you have Lazard, you have Tyler Johnson, who I think is pretty safe. Arian Smith, and then either Pritchard or Gibson as the returner. And if you keep a seventh, like I think it would be hard to argue that Corley deserves to stay over Smith right now. So it's an uphill climb for him, and I'm very interested to see if he meets the challenge or not, because I do think there's talent there. I just think, maybe some of his habits weren't great last year, and now it's a new staff that didn't draft him, and he has to prove a lot to them.
Exactly. He is not drafted here by this staff, and that's something that I'm definitely noticing. Arian Smith is a fan favorite. This fan base loves Arian Smith. When we drafted him, apparently he can't catch, and now he's out there making plays like he did today. So that's definitely a Jets fan favorite. But sticking with some competition, there's a center competition happening with Myers and Tippmann, and Jets fans are really livid about it. They're like, what is this? Tippmann's the guy. They shouldn't even have this competition. What's your thoughts of this? Is this a real competition? Because obviously Myers is with the starters in certain practices. What's the latest that you can tell us about that center competition?
Yeah, it's legit. I mean, I think they signed Myers. I think he's a guy that went into the offseason thinking he'd have a bigger market. And when he didn't, the Jets were like, we'll take you kind of thing. So they bring him in. He's a guy with a lot of experience. He played with Fields. I think the level at which it was a competition kind of surprised me. I thought in the beginning it was kind of just coach speak. Like, yeah, everybody's competing. But they've been splitting reps at first team. I would say purely based on Saturday and what we've seen in practice, like Joe Tippmann to me seems like the much better player. Like right now. And I thought Tippmann played really well on Saturday and Myers did not. And then Myers got beat pretty bad today. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is going to do this to anybody, but I tweeted that he killed Josh Myers, and everybody's like, RIP to Josh Myers. I mean, Lawrence is going to do that to anybody. But yeah, I mean, I think he's someone who's great if he's your backup. Like, and I think their depth is better than it's been in a while on the O-line. But it would just be so surprising to me if Tippmann was not starting at center in week one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great problem to have. It's like we finally have an offensive line and we have depth, and people are like complaining about it instead of realizing that having a competition at that spot is absolutely fantastic. So I want to give you this last question here, Zach, because we're going into week number 2 of the preseason. Based off everything you saw in joint practices, what do you want to see from the Jets' perspective in the preseason game? And I'm assuming the starters are going to play a little bit more on both sides of the ball, but that's just a pure assumption on my end. What can you tell us about what you're looking for Saturday night, preseason week number 2?
Yeah, see, I don't know if they're going to play the starters or not. Glenn was being kind of cagey about that, so I am curious to see if they do play. I want to see more of what you saw in that drive last week. But again, just to keep going back to what I was saying earlier, like I'd like to see Fields taking more risks, taking more shots down the field. Like this is the time of the year to take those risks. Like when the season comes around, maybe you're a little more risk averse, but like take some shots because those plays you need to take them when they're there in the regular season. And so that's kind of where I'm my eye on. I want to see how the O-line looks, and just like a lot of these position battles are pretty close. So like, I'm curious how Pritchett and Gibson acquit themselves as returners now that Gibson's healthy. I'd like to see, this defensive tackle group. There's a lot of guys there fighting for roles. Leonard Taylor, Peyton Page, all these guys. If Jake Tufele can keep on his Linsanity run from last week, Andrew Beck as well. The two legends. But yeah, it's a lot of that. It's a lot of these young guys. And Arian Smith, he's fun to watch, and I want to see if he can keep building on what he's shown so far. And he should have had a long touchdown last week that he underthrew him. But he's someone he'll get more and more reps as the preseason goes along, I would think.
And that reminds me, I have to ask this question because another hero from Saturday night that should have had a touchdown was Donovan Edwards. Jets fans are loving the undrafted free agent running back. Is there a world where the Jets keep 4 running backs and he makes his team? Because he is someone that a lot of Jets fans are loving, and then there's like all this buzz around Breece Hall's situation. I think that Donovan Edwards is having a fantastic camp in preseason so far. Is there a world where he makes a team, or what do you think that whole situation is about?
Yeah, I think there is. At my initial 53, I didn't have him on there. It was just when you get into the numbers game, it's hard to
so hard
pick, especially like at the running back position. You just never know how many a team's going to roll with. They're going to run the ball a lot, so. Yeah, I don't know. I go back and forth. If he keeps playing like he did, it'll be hard to keep him off the roster because then you risk losing him to waivers. But he also needs to. I think he needs to show that he can contribute on special teams in some fashion. That's just like how you, especially with an Aaron Glenn team, he talks about that a lot. Like Kane Nwangwu, he doesn't really bring anything to you as like a running back, but he's a returner and he also plays on special teams coverage a bit. So if Edwards can carve out a role there, I'd feel better about predicting him. I wouldn't say he's like not going to make it for sure. I think he definitely has a shot. And Isaiah Davis is banged up right now. You know, if he gets a lot of carries on Saturday and looks really good again, then I might have him on my next 53.
All right, well, we shall see. Well, folks, Zach Rosenblatt of The Athletic. I just put the link to his profile over on The Athletic, so make sure you guys go check it out. Also, his Jets podcast, Flight Plan, and New York Jets podcast is also linked in the description and in the live chat. So, Zach, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Appreciate all the work you do covering the New York Jets and, of course, the NFL over The Athletic. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, great talking to you, man.
Take care. Have a great rest of your night, everybody. And let's go Jets.